Good afternoon. My name is James Thompson. I'm the author of Thomas Jefferson's Enlightenment, Paris 1785, which was published earlier this year by Commonwealth Books of Virginia. In an earlier comment, I explained that before Jefferson departed for France, he formulated a plan to transform himself into a man of the world and to become a member of the Marquis de Chastellux's elite society in Paris, France. Today I'm going to describe how Jefferson set his plan in motion. Jefferson and his daughter Martha arrived at Le Havre on August 5, 1784. The next day they boarded a coach bound for Paris. The port was at the mouth of the River Seine, 120 miles northwest of the French capital. The road followed the course of the river. On their journey, Jefferson, his daughter, and the panther skin Jefferson purchased in Philadelphia passed through miles of prosperous Norman farmland. Jefferson said of it that no soil could be more fertile, better cultivated, or more elegantly improved. About 3/4 of the way, the road passed through the castle of the Duc de la Rochefoucauld. Jefferson's coach would have stopped there to pay a toll. 14 months later, Jefferson would visit the castle again, this time to join the Duke's close-knit circle of chateau reformers. When Jefferson was not making mental notes about French agriculture, he was no doubt pondering how to implement his plan. The self-described savage from the American mountains would have thought about the 4 men he knew in France and what use he could make of them as he pursued his private mission. The first was the Marquis de Chastellux. In Jefferson's mind, the Marquis was the ideal man. The second was his Charlottesville neighbor, Philip Mazzei. Jefferson knew the Italian nobleman to be a traveler of the world. Third was the Marquis de Lafayette. During his second term as governor of Virginia, Jefferson had corresponded with General Washington's trusted lieutenant and knew him as a friend of liberty and as one of the wealthiest men in France. Jefferson's fourth connection was his former colleague in the Continental Congress. Benjamin Franklin was now His Excellency, America's ambassador to France. For the secretive Virginian, Chastellux represented a tricky problem. To insinuate himself upon the discriminating member of the Royal Academy might lower the Marquis's estimation of his recent American acquaintance. The same for Lafayette. How could Jefferson establish himself as the peer of such an eminent man while dunning him for favors? Anyway, Lafayette was not in France. He would not return from America until the summer of 1785. Mazzei was a different story. Jefferson had given him valuable assistance. He had arranged for him to take a home next door to Jefferson's own in Charlottesville. He had helped him start a vineyard, and he endorsed his venture as an arms dealer during the American Revolution. Unfortunately, the Italian gadfly did not count for much among France's cognoscenti. Also, Mazzei was not in France. Like Lafayette, he would not arrive there until the summer of 1785. What then of Franklin? Having paid its toll, Jefferson's coach proceeded to Mantes-la-Jolie, where it ferried across the Seine. South of the river was more farmland. Gradually, however, it became hilly and wooded. By and by, the coach came to another town, Saint-Germain-en-Laye. At its center was the Garden Palace, where James II of England had taken refuge during the Parliament's glorious rebellion against him in 1688. The coach turned there and followed along the river's bend. Jefferson heard its noisy clanking before he saw La Machine de Marly, whose 14 pumps made it the largest mechanical device in the world. The coach turned from the river and ascended the hill that overlooked the noisy contraption. As it climbed the wooded slope, Jefferson caught a glimpse of an elegant white building perched on its crest. This was the storied residence of Madame du Barry, Louis XV's last mistress. The coach continued on through the village of Marly-le-Roi, where it passed a once grand palace of Louis XIV. Jefferson would return to this neglected park 2 years later with Maria Causeway. This was the road to Versailles, now the home of the French king and the seat of his government. A short way on, the coach turned to the east. Jefferson was now in the final phase of his trip. To the left, in the distance, was Mount Valérien, whose boarding house Jefferson would patronize in 1787. Passing by the resort town of St. Cloud, the coach crossed the Seine again. Skirting the Royal Game Park at Le Bois de Boulogne, it came to Auteuil, then Passy, where the road ran on the river's quay. Franklin lived in Passy. He had an apartment in Le Hôtel de Valentinois. This sumptuous estate was one of several that overlooked the river there. Jefferson admired the meticulously manicured gardens. Oddly, he found them as interesting as the architecture of the residences they garland. But he had business to tend to, so he shifted his attention back to Franklin. Jefferson knew Franklin from their time together in the Continental Congress, where they served with John Adams on the committee that drafted the Declaration of Independence. Although they had worked together, the two men had not been close. But then Franklin had not formed close relationships with anyone. He engaged with people, but avoided intimacy. Jefferson understood why. He had a larger objective, which was to shape himself in the minds of others. In France, during the American Revolution, this had been part of a grand strategy. Franklin transformed himself into the personification of the American cause. In respect to Jefferson's current project, Franklin was pursuing a cross purpose by fashioning himself into an American homespun. Franklin was a legend, a larger-than-life figure. His main project, when Jefferson arrived in France, was writing the second volume of his memoirs and cementing his image in the mind of posterity. Jefferson knew that Franklin would not have set aside his own project to promote Jefferson's. Still, Franklin was accessible. He was beloved by the French people, great and small, and he was extremely well connected. The carefully costumed village sage would describe Paris as a galaxy filled with solar systems. This idea formed the core of Jefferson's new connection with Franklin. Franklin orbited in countless French social circles. He was therefore the key to Jefferson's success in France. So, Jefferson concluded the matter in his mind. He would consult the village sage. He would learn who printed Franklin's writings in France, print a few dozen copies of his own manuscript, and gift them to a select group of Franklin's illuminated admirers. Through Franklin, Jefferson would connect with people in the right circles. For example, Franklin's progressive friend and collaborator, Louis-Alexandre the Duc de la Rochefoucauld. The Duke had penned the first French translation of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson would start with Franklin. When you read my book, bear in mind that Jefferson made a considerable effort to accomplish his private objective. To accomplish his mission, however, he needed help and encouragement from others. He began his mission as the circumspect political loner who wrote the Declaration of Independence alone in his Philadelphia rooms. But as he interacted with France's enlightened elite, Jefferson gradually drew out of his original personality. This concludes my comment on how Jefferson launched his Salon campaign. If you have any questions about this or other aspects of Thomas Jefferson's life, you can contact me at jct@commonwealthbooks.org. You can look inside the book and purchase a signed copy of Thomas Jefferson's Enlightenment at www.commonwealthbooks.org. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to speaking with you again soon.